Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico, and welcome to the Philosopher's Classroom, where we take a more academic look at something that we've already looked at on the Philosopher channel. So we've been talking about psychological egoism, and the whole idea here is that we can only make choices that benefit ourselves. That's our ultimate goal in any kind of choice that we make. Possible other perspectives are psychological altruism. That is the possibility that we could make some choices that benefit others, and it would be more like an ultimately benefit others, right? I mean, because almost everything that we do, we could think of some way in which it benefits us, but the main focus of our decision would be to benefit someone else. In fact, there's a great article, or a great great article that I read on a philosopher named May. I can't remember what his first name is. I'll put a link in the description though. But talking about how sometimes we make decisions that benefit two people, and when we make those decisions, if it most benefits the other person, or I should say, if it's essentially benefiting the other person, not just most benefits them, then that should count as altruistic. Because we could accidentally make choices that benefit ourselves the most. But if our motivation was benefiting somebody else, that's what's important for this theory. So anyway, the psychological egoism claims that you can't make altruistic choices. You can't make choices that are purely for the sake of duty or anything like that. Only psychological choices, only choices that benefit yourself. That's your whole motivation when you, and of course it doesn't seem like it, right? Like it seems like there's some choices that we make that we want others to benefit, and that's why we made those choices. The psychological egoist has two reasons that they will give in support of their view. By the way, I got these from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy online. Amazing resource. Philosophers, I'll put a link for that one too, man. That is such a good resource, and especially when I just want, like, give me the nitty gritty. I got to do a show. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've read all this stuff in books too, but there's so much expounding that goes on in books. Here are the views that are available right now. So yeah, highly recommend that for any of you budding philosophers. Anyway, so here's the first reason the psychological egoist would give is that most of the behavior we see is egoistic, is to benefit ourselves, and the altruistically seeming behaviors, we can give some kind of story that is egoistic, that explains the same exact stuff, but shows why we should consider that to be in the best interest of the person who's actually choosing. I don't know. I don't personally, when I hear that, it just doesn't. I don't want to hear a story of why I can explain it one way. This sounds more like an empirical question. Like show me why should I believe. Not how I could believe that. And you probably have seen some choices that you've made for the benefit of others, and there's no reason that you have besides philosophy. Besides you already have a philosophical perspective that you want to protect. To think that you are choosing really for your own good. So yeah, I don't think that's a very good response. The second is that when we want somebody to do something, we typically motivate them themselves by egoistic concerns. So we'll say, hey, do you want to you want to go to the movies? You have to do your homework first, right? So in order to motivate movies, in order to motivate homework doing, you give a reward or possibly a punishment. If you don't do your homework, you're going to get grounded. So we typically appeal to self-interest in order to motivate people to do other things. Again, I don't know that that's a great reason. That might show that most of our behavior is egoistic. I don't know that it does. But that's the best that you can really get from that. It's not a really good reason to think that all behavior is egoistic. Okay, so those are reasons that the egoist gives for his perspective. There are 4 reasons I have against his perspective, and this is by the way, from an altruist's perspective. I'm not claiming, I mean, I think I probably would fall on the altruist's side, but I'm not claiming, this from an altruist perspective. I'm saying this is what altruists would say. I don't really have arguments for the person who thinks that we can make choices purely based on duty. I don't have good arguments for that. All right, so for the altruist, the first is that in order to even be self-interested, in order to make choices that are self-interested, we have to really focus our interest in something else first. So, for example, let's say me being healthy is something that is in my own self-interest, but in order for me to gain that health, I have to focus on the health. That needs to be the motivation of my decisions, and not, something that not just benefiting myself, right? So I have to focus on, a goal of, let's say, I don't know, cutting down sugar, right? This is crazy. We're about to do a sugar cleanse diet, people. My wife is making me do it. If you see me start blinking, pass out, then you'll know. Low blood sugar, I don't know. I'm sweating over it, man. I love cappuccinos, and oh God, I can't imagine a world without them. And now I'm going to have to figure out what it's like with just espresso. I don't know. First world problems. Anyway, so that's a possibility. Typically a response to that argument is that, yeah, but the ultimate goal is your own self-interest, right? So that's what we're really worried about. Okay, so you have to direct your interest in some places in order to get there, but that's ultimately what you're going for, and that's what the egoist really cares about. So yeah, not a great argument. I do think that we could change that argument partially, and here's what I mean. Most of us would agree that love is an important thing for our own interest, right? Like we want to love people, and it makes people happy to be in love, right? I personally think, and this is a whole lot of personal philosophy, but I think that part of love is wanting what's best for the other person, and if it's for your own benefit, then it doesn't work, right? That's not love. So I think in order to make ourselves happy, we need to put other people first, and then it just so happens that we become happy. But if that's our goal, to make ourselves happy, then we end up with stuff like divorce. I think, right? I think you go into a marriage not to make yourself happy, but to make somebody else happy, and then you happen to get happy because of it. But yeah, I mean, of course, you could always say, but your ultimate goal is your own happiness. I don't know. I mean, that's debatable, I guess. But yeah, I think at least the argument is strengthened that way, even if it doesn't work. The second argument, check the Philosopher channel for the same video, and I'll put a link in the description for it as well. And that is the self-sacrifice argument that I talked about that in that one. The third one, though, I think is the strongest argument, and this is from a guy named Daniel Batson and his crew, his colleagues, and they did a bunch of experimental psychology, a bunch of experiments, and what they did was it was fascinating, because I'm always blown away by how these guys can figure out these clever experiments. But they isolated every possible variable for explaining human behaviors in all these, I guess the motivation of human behaviors. And for example, here's for an example. Let's say we're going to help somebody do their homework, and the psychological egoist would explain that by saying, well, you would feel guilty otherwise, right? You don't want that bad feeling, so the reason you help that person is really for your own good. So Batson would change that variable, and instead he could make you not feel bad about it. I mean, this isn't what he did. He did something like he offered you to see a funny movie that would take your mind off it or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But you could, I think this is what you could do instead. You could offer a happy pill, You drug the person if they could either take a happy pill, or they could help the person, and that can't be that can't be ethically sound. But I mean, you get my point, right? Like, you could do something that for sure this person would be happy. They wouldn't have to worry about helping somebody else. And there are highly empathic people that chose to help anyway. So the reasoning goes, this shows that those explanations aren't cogent when they aren't cogent, that they don't succeed, because once the variables have been isolated, the people still want to help. That is a hotly debated experiment series. That same guy, May, though, that I mentioned, that I'll put a link in the description. He has his article online too, by the way, for free. So he does a really good job of defending Batson's experiments. Very interesting. I don't know, man. I thought it was cool. The fourth possible reason to reject psychological egoism is that there are some evolutionary explanations that favor altruism over egoism. I'm not going to go over them too much because I just don't think that they're good arguments. You can come up with any kind of evolutionary story, and I just don't think it supports arguments very well. So for example, we want to describe why humans, let's say, like in our example, why humans want to help each other with their homework, and we could have some kind of explanation of how, our prehistoric ancestors were helping each other, gathering tools and stuff like that, and it eventually led to this. But that's just not a great explanation. That's more like a theory than support. So I think you can always come up with some counter explanation. To why egoism is better. But I don't know. So that you can read up on that if you want to, though. So, any case, thanks for checking this out. Again, if you haven't seen the philosopher episode, check that out first. To also keep a lookout. In the next couple of days, I'll have a blog post relating to this on thephilosopher.com about how much of this debate should be science, how much of it should be philosophy. I'll have on the Philosopher channel, I'll have a video about on the current event, the Philosopher's World, where I'll talk about artificially intelligent robots and if they can add anything to this discussion that we're having now. Anyway.